This is Let's Talk Chattanooga Real Estate, the podcast where we cover home buying, home selling, home improvement tips and ideas, market trends and developments, and investing in real estate. If you own real estate in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area, or want to own real estate here, then you're in the right place. Let's Talk Chattanooga Real Estate is hosted by Blake Watson, a real estate agent and investor in Tennessee and Georgia.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Blake Watson with Epique Realty, and we're just over halfway through the year. So this week, we're going to take a look at the Chattanooga real estate market and see where we stand in the middle of 2026. If you've been on the sidelines thinking about buying a house or maybe selling your house, or if you're just curious about where the real estate market stands, this is the episode for you as we unpack the data from the first half of the year and see what it can tell us about what to expect as we continue on in 2026. This is Let's Talk Chattanooga Real Estate, so let's get started. Earlier this week, I was at the bank handling some business at the teller window, and the bank teller asked me how the real estate market was doing. And I said it's been steady, not a lot of surprises. Houses keep selling, people keep moving, and unfortunately, the prices of homes keeps inching up just like the rest of inflation. Well, she commented that she had noticed this very thing herself. She keeps an eye on her home valuation on Realtor.com, and she says it has remained steady for the most part over the past several years. She commented that she thought that house prices usually went up and down every once in a while, and then she recalled that it was around 2008, 2009 that she remembered house prices going down. And I just told her that prices are certainly remaining steady and still going up a bit each year in our area, and then I left it at that. But her comment got me to thinking about how people sometimes think of the real estate market like the stock market. And they think about prices going up and down and the whole market fluctuating, sometimes wildly, in just a few months' time. However, that is not the reality of real estate, particularly residential real estate where people's homes are involved. And yes, it is true that the overall residential real estate market did have some depreciation and it did lose value in the 2007 through 2010, we'll say, the housing crisis and the Great Recession. But when you look historically at home prices, that dip in values during the Great Recession really stands out as a unique and a rare time in the U.S. housing market when home values truly declined. And even here in Chattanooga, they were not huge declines. In fact, we had some great news that came right during that recession, and that was that the VW plant was going to open in Chattanooga. And so we got that influx of excitement and interest in our market, which helped bolster the housing market as well here in Chattanooga. And it's hard to find anything even remotely close to the housing crash of the Great Recession in the late 2007, 8, 9, 10 era. The norm, as we will see today on the podcast, is for houses to remain at least steady in value and, of course, over time to increase in value. So let's look at the Chattanooga market using the latest data that was just pulled at the beginning of July from the Chattanooga MLS, which is operated by the Greater Chattanooga Realtors. We're going to look at June figures on a year-to-year basis, and we'll take a look at the entire first half of the year and compare it to the first half of 2025, a year ago. So first, let's look at the total number of listings. This is what we call the inventory of homes available for sale in the Chattanooga MLS. And this is probably the biggest takeaway from looking at the research. Inventory is up year over year significantly. In June of 2025, we had 3,334 homes for sale, and in June of 2026, we had 4,120 homes for sale. That's a 23.6% increase year over year from June to June, and that means there are a lot more homes for sale than there were a year ago. And what does that mean for you? Well, if you're thinking about buying a house, then you will have more options and more choices to choose from than in years past. In fact, you have to go back to 2015 to find a time when we had over 4,000 homes for sale. We haven't had this much inventory in over 10 years. All this additional inventory definitely makes home shopping easier for you to find the home that fits your needs. If you're selling a home, then this added inventory simply means that you're going to need to present your house in the best light possible. In other words, put your best foot forward in making sure that your home is in good working order, that it's clean and attractive to potential buyers, and perhaps most importantly, that it's priced correctly. What we find is that homes that are overpriced sit on the market much longer than the homes around them. And they don't get many showings simply because there's enough inventory out there that similar homes will be seen by buyers in that price range, and they may make a decision about your home without ever even taking a tour, simply because they perceive that it's overpriced. When there are a lot of choices, as there are now with this added inventory, then buyers can eliminate some properties from their search pretty quickly if the price is higher than the market will support. And speaking of price, let's look at the median sale price in the Chattanooga MLS. As of June 2026, the median sale price is $355,000. That's up 2.25% from June of 2025, a year ago. So that's when the median sale price was $347,000. So you see, even though there's more inventory available, houses are still selling and prices are still increasing. Now, note that I told you it's only a 2.25% increase from year to year in that median sale price. That's a lot like the general inflation rate. It's kind of tracking with inflation across the entire country for goods and services of all types when we talk about a 2.25% increase. It just feels like a lot more of an increase when you recognize that the house that you could have bought for $347,000 a year ago is now $8,000 higher, and it now costs $355,000. That's just 2.25% difference, but the median sales price feels a lot higher because we're talking about thousands, and it does continue to rise and increase each year. So you might wonder, if there's a lot more inventory, are there a lot more sales that go with it? Sales have definitely continued to increase. The number of sales has increased, but not nearly as quickly as the inventory has been increasing. If we look at June of 2026, there were just over 1,000 homes sold in the Chattanooga MLS. In June of 2025, a year ago, there were 978 homes that sold in the Chattanooga MLS. So over a year, it's roughly the same amount, but a little bit higher. That's actually a 3.6% increase in the total number of sales in the month of June from year to year. So there has been an increase. Now, if we look at the entire first half of 2026, we go all the way January through June, we can see that sales have increased about 5.5% year over year. That's not a price increase. That's a number of homes sold increase, 5.5%. In the first 6 months of 2026, there were 5,300 homes sold. In the first 6 months of 2025, a year ago, there were 5,024 homes sold. That's a 5.5% increase in number of sales in the first 6 months of the year. So yes, the number of sales has increased, but not as quickly as the number of homes in inventory that are available to sell. And this has slowed everything down. It has created more months of inventory. It's given us what we now call a balanced market. Before we got to this much inventory, Chattanooga was considered a seller's market. We had less than 4 months of inventory available. Now we're running a little bit more than 4 months of inventory, so it's considered a balanced market. You have to get to over 6 months of inventory before it becomes a buyer's market. For now, we have a balanced market. I think any of us can appreciate a market being balanced as being a good place to be. And finally, let's look at the average days on market. This is the amount of time from when a home is listed for sale and when it goes under contract to sell. In June, a year ago, the days on market averaged 54 days. That was a year ago. In June of 2026, the average days on market is 57 days. Now, that's almost 2 months on average for a home to be listed before it goes under contract. It might feel like a long time when you consider how quickly things were moving just a few years ago, but it's really very normal. And as I said, it's a very balanced market. And that days on market data point tells us that homes are still selling, just not at breakneck speed. This is great for you if you're looking to buy, as you'll likely have more time to make decisions about which home is the best fit for you. You'll have a little more flexibility and a little more breathing room when you're making your decisions. So that's where we are, the first half of 2026. Now, what should we expect moving forward into the second half of the year and the rest of 2026? Well, one thing that has heavily influenced the entire market, and you certainly are aware of it, is interest rates. You hear about that all the time on the news, and if you're looking at buying a home, then you're certainly considering interest rates. Well, early in the year, interest rates were actually easing down. They actually got to around 6%, and in fact, for a few weeks there in February, they dipped a little below 6% interest for the typical 30-year fixed-rate home mortgage. Then, once the war with Iran began, we saw interest rates go up. And that had as much to do with the uncertainty of things to come for the economy, for inflation. We know that oil prices went up and have remained up. And while it may not be as direct of an impact, fertilizer prices are up considerably as well. Same thing. Because of the war with Iran, that created an escalation in fertilizer prices. And while that may seem a little removed, you think, well, I don't buy a whole lot of fertilizer. Well, you know what? All the food we eat is coming from farmers, and they are growing it and using fertilizer to grow it. So farmers are the main users of fertilizer. So we are seeing prices impacted by this increase in the cost of fertilizer as well. And I point all that out, the oil, the fertilizer, just the general inflation. While that's all happening, there is uncertainty in the market about where interest rates should be. And it's not a simple matter to just lower mortgage interest rates. In fact, my expectation for the rest of this year of 2026 is that we are going to see similar interest rates throughout the rest of the year. And when I say similar, probably around 6.5%, maybe a little lower, but there's so much uncertainty. And we've got the midterm elections coming up this year. So we're going to have a lot of uncertainty there all the way into November. So if there's one thing that's for certain, it's that we don't know where interest rates will be, but I am predicting that they'll remain in the 6.5% range. Maybe they'll dip down closer to 6%, but they're not going to vastly change from that. So with that interest rate prediction for the rest of 2026, roughly around 6.5% for long-term 30-year fixed-rate mortgages, I'm expecting that we will also see about the same pace of home sales through the rest of the year as well. So that's an increase in home sales from 2025, maybe about 5% increase in home sales. And I'm talking about quantity of homes sold, maybe about 5% increase, and prices of homes to also slightly increase. I don't expect them to come down at all. There's nothing to indicate that prices of homes are going to be coming down. They certainly may remain flat and not increase much at all, if any, but there's nothing to indicate that we're going to see a decrease in home costs. With that being said, for the rest of 2026, it's probably going to be about like what we've seen these past 3 to 4 months. Interest rates hovering around 6.5%, housing prices remaining about steady. And again, as I mentioned, the June median sales price was $355,000. I would expect it to stay around that number for the median sales price. So that means half the homes are less than that, half the homes are higher than that. That's not a small number. I mean, $355,000 is a lot more than it was just a couple of years ago. That's my prediction for the rest of 2026. This should give you some level of confidence that things aren't going to change drastically. There's just no expectation of that. Even if all tensions with Iran were ended and everybody was happy again and the Strait of Hormuz was open today, it's going to take a long time for everything to cycle through and kind of ramp back up to the production levels that we had before the war began. So expect the real estate market to remain about the same for the rest of the year. It's a great time for you to be looking. If you're wanting to buy a house, now is the time to be looking because there's a lot of inventory and prices are pretty steady. It's a good time to get in. If you'd like to talk more about how this might fit your situation, if you're looking to buy or looking to sell, absolutely. I'd love to talk to you, and you can contact me, Blake Watson, and my phone number is 423-315-1815. You can call or text. It's all good. Just contact me. You can also find me on Instagram as Rock and Roll Blake, and on Facebook and LinkedIn as Blake Watson. And of course, I have a website. It's athomechattanooga.com. That's athomechattanooga.com. And I am a realtor licensed in Tennessee and Georgia with Epique Realty. Phone number 888-893-3537. Thanks so much for listening to Let's Talk Chattanooga Real Estate. And as always, I wish you the best in your real estate journey.